안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하기를 실천하고 있는 동탄 왕코입니다. 지금 야간 2일차 퇴근하고 8시에 영어학원 갔다가 지금 돌아왔습니다. 이런 말을 하는 이유는 제가 지금 너무 피곤하다는 걸 여러분들에게 알려드리기 위해서 하는 거예요. 너무 졸립니다. 와. 그래도 운동을 해야겠죠? 스트레칭 하고 팔굽혀펴기랑 복근 운동이랑 여러 가지 하겠습니다. 하고 씻고 자야지. CNN을 보도록 하겠습니다.
I'm Nick Payton Walsh in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and this is CNN.
A judge today set Derek Chauvin's bail at $1.25 million in the death of George Floyd. The other 3 former officers charged are due in court for their next hearing later this month. Now, they include Timothy Lane, the officer highlighted in this video helping Chauvin pin Floyd to the ground for almost 9 minutes. Lane's attorney claims George Floyd was resisting arrest and that his client suggested rolling Floyd over while Chauvin was kneeling on his neck. That lawyer is Earl Gray, and he joins us now. Counselor, thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
The first question is an obvious one. What do you know that we don't know? Because we don't see Floyd resisting, and we don't hear anything from your client. So what do you have access to that we don't?
Well, number one, I have viewed the body camera of my client throughout this arrest and restraining Mr. Floyd. Besides that, I've interviewed my client. My client has given a complete statement of what he did to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. He also gave a statement to the sergeants right at the scene as to what he did. He was not hiding anything. He thought he was following the protocol of the Minneapolis Police Department in assisting in the arrest of Mr. Floyd.
Counselor,
Counselor,
let's just take it one step at a time. Let's just take it one step at a time. I know this isn't directly germane to your case, but this has bigger implications than just in the courtroom for your client as well. For transparency purposes, why shouldn't the public be seeing this body camera footage? And what do you believe the community would think that it doesn't think now if it did have access to what you have access to?
Well, I can't speak for the community, but if they saw the full body camera on my client, I believe that they would have a different opinion, particularly if they had any knowledge of what police procedure is and how they should proceed on a felony arrest, particularly when the individual they are arresting is under the influence of some kind of drug, which was clearly evident in this arrest situation.
Clearly evident how?
And again,
because with what we saw, Counselor, again, you got to give us the benefit of what we've seen. You don't see Floyd being violent or hostile or throwing people around. And when he's on the ground for many minutes, he's not moving at all except to ask for help. What are we missing?
Well, I said that he was clearly under the influence of a drug, which he was because of the autopsy. And you don't see any violent movement. But if you saw the body camera, you would know that when my client, when he went up to see Mr. Floyd to talk to him, Mr. Floyd did not show his hands. He put his right hand down below the seat, which is clear evidence from my client that he might be going to grab a gun or hide drugs. So my client told him, "Let me see both of your hands," and he pulled out his gun. There was a pause. He didn't show his hands right away, but then he put both of his hands on the steering wheel. As soon as he did that, Mr. Como, my client put his gun in his holster. They then took Mr. Floyd out of his vehicle because they were going to arrest him. And he resisted leaving his vehicle. They finally got him out of his vehicle. It wasn't a violent resistance, but it was not the kind of non-resistance that an individual should do when a police officer is arresting him. He should get out of his vehicle and follow the orders of the police officer. He didn't do that. Once they get him out of the squad car, they told him to put his hands on his head. He did. And then they tried to put his hand, because that's what they're supposed to do. They went to put his hands behind his back to handcuff him, and then he resisted again. He didn't want that. But they got the handcuffs on him. They then directed him over and set him down on the sidewalk and went over to investigate the other two individuals that were in the squad car, who are now in the Mr. Floyd's car. They're now out on the sidewalk. In any event, after they talked to them, they're now going to put Mr. Floyd in the squad car. They take him over to the squad car, and he's walking slowly, and then right before they put him in the squad car, he lays back and falls down. And he says, "I got claustrophobia. I don't want to go in that squad car. I'm not going in the squad car." And he resists going in the squad car. So the police officers are trained that they have to put him in the back seat of the squad car. They're arresting him for a felony. They finally managed to get him in one side, the driver's side of the back seat, and then that's when Chauvin and his partner come to the other side, and Mr. Floyd shoved with his feet out towards where Officer Chauvin was, and he ended up outside on the other side of the squad car, on the door, by the sidewalk.
Four police officers
So now
couldn't
he's
get
got
one guy who's handcuffed behind his back into a squad car.
Yes, well, they did get him in there, but it wasn't easy because he was fighting. He was handcuffed, but he's 6 foot. I think he's 6'2", and he was, he had the build of a bodybuilder.
But there are four cops. And Counselor, they wind up with him on the floor with his hands behind his back and
That's correct.
and a knee on the neck, which is not proper training and protocol, as we both know, and anybody with common sense knows, for 9 minutes with your client assisting. Now, you don't need training to know that it was too much. The civilians there knew it was too much. They were asking him not to do it. He was begging for them not to do it. This is about training, or is this about common sense, or is this about following blue over what was obvious in front of your eyes?
Well, he didn't let me finish, but he did go outside the squad car. Pardon me?
Go ahead, please.
Okay. He's now on the sidewalk, and my client, Mr. Floyd, is kicking his legs. My client is holding his legs, and when Mr. Floyd is saying he can't breathe and stating those things, my client says, "To the 20-year veteran, shall we roll him over?"
So actually, he
Chauvin
says that.
said
I want the audience to hear that, though, Counselor, because remember, this is the first time they've ever heard anything like this, because they haven't been given access to the body camera footage. In fact, I see you're organizing your papers there as well. Let's do this, Counselor. I want to give you full hearing on this. I want to give you full hearing. I'm going to take a quick break, and let's talk it through. Because remember the audience, Mr. Gray. They haven't heard any of this. They haven't seen George Floyd doing any kind of resisting, and the state won't release the body camera footage for public consumption at this point. So I appreciate you talking us through it. Let's take a quick break and take me through what you think matters in this case, okay?
Thank you.
I developed a biodegradable biodegradable, mass-producible plastic alternative made from polylactic acid. Polylactic acid is made from plants and is eco-friendly. We are now working towards making consumer products with this material. I hope to take this technology from Japan to the rest of the world.
We developed Limex, a plastic and paper alternative that is made from limestone. If we utilize Earth's almost infinite reserve of limestone, we can help reduce our dependency on petroleum-based plastic. Limex can also be recycled highly efficiently. I believe we can eliminate plastic waste completely through our innovation.
Doors, to develop contacts, and to unlock secrets. It takes trust.
It was the first time he really came out of his shell in front of a camera.
Trust that you'll listen.
So great that you're here today. It just highlights what's making a difference.
That you'll be honest. I don't want to pry, but what sort of conversations do you have with them? Trust that you'll be accurate and you'll be fair. It was an unprecedented move, very eerie. All the roads have been closed off. Describe the scene that you arrived in. The Apache attack helicopter. This is what Captain Wales has been flying. What do you do with Crimea?
This is Europe's problem.
Do you want talks with them?
What is the point of talking now?
We continue to monitor the government in crisis. This was the Duchess's first news interview. Rare access indeed. That's what it's all about. Max Foster, CNN.
The Seiko Prospex, by the way, Prospex means professional specification, which is appropriate because this watch has its origins in a 1965 expedition to Antarctica by a Japanese crew. Seiko was the giant of Japanese watchmaking at the time, so it got the job of making a watch that could endure the harsh conditions of Antarctica. This is a watch you can wear up to 1,000 feet underwater. It always reminds me of a Japanese samurai warrior, all those different layers of metal and wood over them. It can take a beating and it can respond. So if you're looking for something that has that robustness, that strength, but at the same time you just want something that looks really striking, will grab people's attention, this is a great watch.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. Real news that shapes our world. Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. It all starts here. And that's why we're here. Bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson. Monday through Friday, only on CNN.
I'm Clarissa Ward in London, and this is CNN.
All right, this is very interesting. We have Earl Gray, counselor for Thomas Lane, one of the former Minneapolis police officers on trial now in the murder case of George Floyd. Counselor, thank you for staying through the break. You described, because again, remember, and audience, you should know this. As counsel, Mr. Gray has seen the body camera footage. We haven't. So remember that. Counsel says that the body camera footage shows that George Floyd resisted. We had all these different angles of him that show every aspect of this, not in full, but each phase, you never see any kind of resistance. You turned it not a violent type of resistance, but the kind of resistance you shouldn't do that warranted this kind of treatment, in your opinion, counsel?
Well, I would call it a struggle. They were struggling with him, and once they got control of him, where my client was on the feet of Mr. Floyd, and Officer King was in the middle on his waist, and Chauvin was on his shoulder or neck. No matter what, well, that's questionable, by the way.
How?
My client.
His knee is right on his neck in the video.
Questionable because look at the autopsy. There's not any injury to this man's highlight bone or larynx. He didn't suffer a strangulation or an asphyxiation. But let me finish this.
But also, just to be
Now, my
clear,
client's-
that's not what the autopsy that the family did showed. And the knee is clearly on his neck, and the man is dead. So something happened, counsel.
Yes,
Continue.
he had methamphetamine. I don't want to talk about the deceased, Mr. Floyd, because what I'd like to tell you is
Yes.
while my client's on his feet, he says, let me get it here. While Mr. Floyd was moving, Lane asked, should we roll him on his side? And Officer Chauvin said, no, staying put where we got him. Now, we've got a 20-year officer here, and you got a 4-day officer in my client. He goes on, however, my client does, and says, I am worried about excited delirium or whatever. What's excited delirium? It's a situation where you've taken a lot of drugs and you get excited. And you might die. That's what he was worried about. And then Chauvin says to my client again, that's why we have him on his stomach. Then later, my client again says, do you want to roll him on his side? This is later, right before the ambulance comes. And again, he's not rolled on his side. Now the question, of course, the public is watching this. My client's at his feet. He doesn't have a real good view of Mr. Chauvin, or excuse me, Mr. Floyd, of what Chauvin's doing. But if all these people say, why didn't my client intercede? Well, if the public is there and they're so in an uproar about this, they didn't intercede either. And my client's down where he can't really see.
Hold on.
20분도 안 했네.
Counselor, hold on. Two things. One, you're laying on a man's legs.
이거
You've
10개만
got a
하고
fine view of what's going on
그만하겠습니다.
with that man. The other
너무
officer is
졸려요.
literally a foot in front of you on his neck. Two, I understand that he has a senior officer telling him what to do, but there's also a duty to intervene. And if you think that officer is doing something that's dangerous to a civilian, you have a duty to intervene. And he did not intervene. And the idea that the civilians should have rushed in to a policing situation in the inner city of Minneapolis against 4 police officers that have weapons and are kneeling on the neck of a man. Don't you think that's asking a little much of civilians and a little too little of your client?